First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and the Tata Memorial Center for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to come to India for the first time. I'm very happy to be here, and I will present some highlights of the Brazilian health system. I personally think that the Brazilian health system is a very interesting one, both for the good reasons, its successes, and also for the bad reasons, its challenges and its failures. I will try to present in this short time an overview of both. So I will start with a short background information on Brazil and the Brazilian health system. I will discuss a little bit about health outcomes and efficiency in Brazil, because this is a major challenge for any health system in the world. I will shortly show you that even though Brazil was one of the first developing countries to achieve universal health coverage, this was not done overnight. It is a result of many years, many decades, I would say, of gradual progress. And if time permits, I would like to highlight two features of the Brazilian health system that have proved very successful. Okay, Brazil is, as most of you probably know, is a very large country. It's the 5th largest country in the world. And it also has the 5th largest population with 208 million people in 2015. 82% of it is urban. In both population and area, Brazil accounts for about 40% of Latin America. So it is often seen as the giant of Latin America. It is an upper middle income country. Its GDP per capita is $2 trillion. And its GDP per capita is about around $10,000 and $15,000 in purchasing power parities. The Brazilian health system, I would guess, is an image of the country itself. It is large, complex, very difficult to manage. It covers the whole population through different arrangements. It spends about $200 billion per year, or about $1,000 per capita. It mobilizes 2.5 million workers, health workers, and it has a huge network of facilities, including over 7,400 hospitals with 500,000 beds and 70,000 ambulatory facilities. As I was saying, it is diversified and complex. It has a very, one of its main features is that it is a mixed public-private system. We have, on the public side, we have what we call the single health system, SUS, which is nothing but single, because in fact we have a very large private system as well. And the system has a very wide variety of organizational and financial arrangements, which makes the system or the systems very difficult to coordinate and manage. It has it has reached a number of success, but also it has some shortcomings. These include that it is relatively costly, it is inefficient, and in spite of the progress in recent years, it is still fragmented. And also, inequalities are still very much present. This shows a mapping of the health facility network, and you can see that there are facilities owned by the federal government, by the state government, by municipal governments, and here it is important to say that healthcare delivery in the public sector has been decentralized to the municipal level a few years ago. We have a number of facilities that are private but work for the public system, SUS, and also a large number of facilities that don't work for the public system. Approximately, we can split the health system, the health facility system, network in three groups. One is made of public facilities, which mostly provide services within SUS, the public insurance system. Then we have another third of the facilities that provide services under SUS, under the public system, but are privately managed. They are private facilities. And then you have another third, which includes purely private facilities, which these are private facilities and are privately funded. This is just to show that Brazil has a relatively high level of health resources, for example, physicians and hospital beds, compared to other developing countries. Health spending is, as I was saying, around $1,000 per capita. A little less than half of it is funded by the public sector, and 55% of it is private funding. This is a strange situation in a country that has a public system that is universal and free for all. The table below shows that compared with most other developing countries, Brazil spends a relatively high amount, both in proportion of, in absolute number and as a proportion of GDP. Brazil spends between 8 and 9% of GDP on health, which is much higher. It's almost twice the amount that South Asian countries on average spend. This graph shows how total health spending in Brazil is composed of. So about 26% comes from the federal government. Another 20 to 25% comes from state and municipal governments. About another 25% is channeled through private insurance companies, and we have several subgroups within this private health insurance system. And another quarter is channeled through household spending, out-of-pocket spending. Now, a little bit about health outcomes in Brazil. Brazil is an average performer. It has average health indicators which are better than most many developing countries, but as they are not as good as some developing countries, as I will show. This is a graph that shows a health indicator, in this case, infant mortality on the vertical axis, and total health spending per capita on the horizontal axis. And it shows that, as expected, we have a general trend line that is decreasing, which means that as countries spend more on health, health outcomes tend to become better. But I think that the most interesting is that there are a large diversity in the level of outcomes per dollar spent on health. You see that above this line, this decreasing line, are countries which tend to spend more than average given their health outcomes. And below the line, you see the countries that spend less given their level of outcomes, or are better at using the resources that they invest on health. Brazil is, gonna show here, is close to Saudi Arabia. Doesn't show, the name doesn't show because of the graphic is crowded. So it is an average performer. It is just over the line, as is India, actually. India is close to Uganda, right on the decreasing line. So both of them are average performers in terms of resources and outcomes. Now, the question is, what are the factors that explain that some countries do a better job in terms of health outcomes, given the resources that they have? One problem is efficiency. There is growing evidence around the world that health sectors in the vast majority of countries are very inefficient. A large proportion of the spending that goes to health is just wasted. There was a study published in about maybe 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, in the United States, that looked at estimating the level of wastage in the health sector, in the American health sector. And they come up with the figure of 35%, which means 35% of health spending in the United States is just wasted. Doesn't serve any purpose. It doesn't produce anything. Okay? This, to varying degrees, this happens in most health systems, and this graph shows the findings of a study that we did on Brazilian hospitals. It shows on the left side, the scale is a score of hospital efficiency, where the higher the score, the closer to 1, means that the hospitals are more efficient, okay, in producing outputs given the level of resources that they use. The general conclusion was that the average Brazilian hospital produces 1/3, 0.35, 1/3 of what an efficient hospital in Brazil could produce. Trying to maybe oversimplify, the conclusion would be that 2/3 of the spending on hospitals is wasted. And you can see also another aspect in this graph. It shows that the level of efficiency varies depending on, to some degree, who owns and operates the hospital, but especially depending on the type of governance that the hospital has, whether it is a typical public facility, a private facility, a public facility enjoying a large amount of managerial autonomy, etc. This shows the same thing, the same finding, but indicating that the level of efficiency also varies depending on the payment mechanism that was used. As usual, I speak too much, so I will skip some things. This is to show how the long way that Brazil has been through until reaching universal health coverage in 1998. In 1998, the new constitution established the universal health right to health, and the public system, SUS, was established. Okay. You have some other slides in the presentation that you can look at, and we can even use in our discussion. Thank you very much.